What's happening, guys? So let's talk a little bit about this hilarious Captain Marvel farce, man. This drama surrounding the aftermath of this movie, Captain Marvel, which came out a few days ago, and I just have to say I find the whole thing hilarious. I really do. Um, and I think that we can all agree, whatever you thought of the movie and whatever your personal thoughts are on it. I think we can all agree that Captain Marvel was an epic failure. I think we can all agree that it was a failure of epic proportions. And what do I mean by that? I mean, think back to when Ghostbusters 2016 came out. Yeah, that movie. Let's talk about that piece of shit. You know, when Ghostbusters 2016 came out, even before the movie got released, it developed a reputation. And that reputation has never left the movie since. That reputation sticks. And basically, before that movie came out, you had all the people behind the movie. Paul Feig, the director, the people at Sony, the cast, like Leslie Jones and Melissa McCarthy. Before the movie even came out, they were very derogatory and very disrespectful towards fans. They basically said, before the movie's even released, before it's even in theaters, they said, anybody who doesn't like this movie is a sexist. Paul Feige said anyone who doesn't like the movie is a Trump supporter, they're a sexist, they're a white male, and they're basically full of shit. Anyone who doesn't like it is an asshole. Fuck you if you don't like our movie. You know, what a great way to sell a movie. Seriously, what a great start. Before your movie's even out, let's attack the fans. Let's attack the the paying customers, the potential customers. Well, you would have thought that Hollywood and the people behind all these movies and all these directors and all these actors and producers and all the people in the marketing for these movies, you would think they would have learned from that and learned that, look, we can't attack our fans, we can't drive away paying customers, and we can't, give our movie a reputation before it even comes out. Well, clearly they haven't learned, because the people behind Captain Marvel did the exact same thing. You had Brie Larson months before the movie even came out. Even as close to a couple of weeks before the movie's release as well. For all that time, all she did was come out and bash and criticize and be derogatory towards potential paying customers, saying that white males shouldn't see the movie, that it's not for them. Uh, talking about kicking people's ass and talking about gender norms and stereotypes and trying to make the whole thing political. When the paying audience that want to see these movies, the majority of them are comic book fans. They just want to see a movie. They just want to see a superhero flick. They want to see action. They want to see some drama. They want to be entertained. They don't want to have all this political shit forced down their throat. And before the movie even came out, you had Brie Larson just being an absolute cow and being an absolute asshole to fans and saying that anybody who doesn't like the movie is a white male troll, and anybody who doesn't like the movie is a hypocrite, and anybody who doesn't like the movie is a racist and a sexist and this, that, and the other, all the phobes and all the isms and all the labels you can put on people that don't like it are Nazis, and that's the new way. It seems like that's the new norm from Hollywood now. Before your movie comes out, you kind of have that. You kind of have that as a scapegoat, don't you? Like, you can just say, oh, if anybody doesn't like the movie, that person's just a troll. Just ignore them. All the people, all the thousands of people who give it negative reviews, we'll just remove all the negative reviews because, those ones are just trolls. But the positive reviews, no, they're the real reviews. And that's kind of what's happened, isn't it? Rotten Tomatoes, their platform and their credibility has just been absolutely smashed to pieces. Like, they have pissed away the last remaining bit of credibility that they had with this whole, Captain Marvel situation. And Captain Marvel, the reputation it's always going to have, and this is why I call it an epic failure, the reputation that this movie is going to have is it's going to be the movie that killed the industry. This is the movie that exposed the bias and the shill-like behavior of the mainstream media's reviews on movies, okay? Because the fact that Rotten Tomatoes actually had to mold and reshape their entire platform just to accommodate this one movie, just for pure and utter damage control for this movie, that is going to stick. I'm telling you right now, people are never going to forget it. Okay, Ghostbusters 2016 isn't getting a sequel. You want to know why? Because the fans had a backlash against it. Why did they have a backlash against it? Because the director, Paul Feige, the scumbag that he is, because the cast, who are a bunch of, just a bunch of crybabies crying and complaining because people didn't like their movie. They couldn't just admit that the movie wasn't that good. They couldn't just admit that it wasn't funny. They couldn't just admit that the special effects sucked. They couldn't just admit that the movie, wasn't a hit with fans, that fans of the original didn't like it. And I'm not even a fan of the original Ghostbusters. I'm just telling you, from the perspective of the fans of that movie. They didn't like the reboot. They didn't like it at all. Just like the fans of Freddy Krueger didn't like the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot. Just like I, being a huge Predator fan, I told you guys I hated the Predator reboot that came out last year. Told you guys that. Okay, when the fans of a franchise don't like the movie, the wrong thing to do is to turn around and start attacking the fans and calling them racist and calling them sexist, calling them phobes and isms and all these other words that they're coming out with in the left to try and demonize anybody who has an opposing opinion. That's going to get your movie a reputation, and as a result of that, Ghostbusters 2016 became a laughing stock. 3 years later, we're now in 2019, that movie is still a laughing stock. Okay, and it's always going to be that. They're never going to get a sequel, and no one's ever gonna pay to see it. Okay, nobody's buying that movie. Okay, they're not going to get, they're not going to be selling action figures of Ghostbusters 2016, are they? Nobody cares about that movie. That movie has no longevity. It's a epic failure, and Captain Marvel is going to be the same. All people are going to remember this movie for is the controversy. All they're going to remember it for is the way that Brie Larson and the people behind the movie reacted. All they're going to remember it for is the fact that Rotten Tomatoes no longer has any credibility with fans. We know that they're going to shill for Marvel. We know that they're going to compromise their integrity just to protect one movie. Okay? The movie was political. It wasn't entertainment. And how was the movie? Now, I mentioned in my Brie Larson video, the last video I did about Brie Larson, I mentioned how I wasn't going to theaters to see the movie. I was going to go to see it. I was actually going to take my girlfriend and we were going to go see the movie because, that's kind of like what we do. I've mentioned in the past how our first date we went to the cinema, and all these years later it's kind of a tradition. We go to the cinema a couple of times every week. It's just something that we do. And I mentioned how, I was going to go see it with her, but after all the backlash and after the comments from Brie Larson and after all the shit in the mainstream media, all the shill articles in the Metro newspaper that we read and all that, we actually decided, both of us decided, let's not bother seeing the movie, let's not go see it. And we didn't see the movie. So Brie Larson saying white males don't come and see the movie, it isn't for you. Well, you didn't get my money, so yeah, thanks for saving me money, Brie Larson. Thanks for that. You saved me a bit of money there. You saved me some time too, because the movie, I mean, I haven't watched the whole movie, but from what I've seen of it, I've watched bits of it online, I've watched clips here and there, and I've watched other people's reviews, and from what I have seen of the movie and from the scenes that I've watched, I can only say that this movie has, to me, this movie represents everything that I've been saying is wrong with movies. Everything that is wrong with modern day movies is what's in Captain Marvel. It has terrible and also typical forced humor that all these comic book movies nowadays seem to have. You guys remember in Justice League, for example, Justice League had just some of the most cringeworthy, desperate humor I've ever seen. Well, this movie was the same. It was just like Justice League in the sense that it had desperate, forced humor. Where the actors are trying so hard to be funny to the point where it's just cringeworthy. It's like the movie Holmes and Watson that came out recently, which I talked about on my top 10 worst movies of 2018 list, man. It was like that, just forced humor. So many of these movies have it, man, and Brie Larson trying to be funny was hilarious. It was hilarious in the sense that it wasn't funny. It was so bad that I actually chuckled. I mean, it was cringeworthy humor. And even Samuel L. Jackson and his charisma and his acting talent couldn't save this movie from being just such an epic failure, man. I mean, again, I mentioned how this movie has everything that's wrong with modern movies. The CGI is terrible, just like in Black Panther, just like in Justice League. And you know, it's funny when I did my review for Black Panther, and you know, I said I criticized that movie how it had terrible CGI and terrible action sequences, which I just didn't enjoy. And for that, I got a bunch of people in the comments calling me a racist and saying you just hate the movie because it's a black guy. And yet when I did my review for Blood and Bone, and I told you guys that was one of my favorite movies of all time with amazing action sequences starring Michael J. White, a black guy. It's funny how none of you guys, you know, none of these same people who called me a racist on my on my Black Panther video. It's funny how none of those guys showed up to that video, because clearly those people don't follow my channel. They just saw the one video and saw that I didn't like that one movie and called me a racist. I mean, I got the same shit on my Creed 2 review. I had people calling me a racist on that. But when I praise a movie that has a black hero, you know, like I love the Blade movies, for example. Not so much the third one, but I love the first two. It's crickets. You hear nothing from these people, but as soon as you criticize a movie like Black Panther, you're a racist. And that's how these people behave, man, these leftists. And yeah, anybody that criticizes Captain Marvel is getting called a sexist. And yeah, the CGI in Captain Marvel, it was even worse. It was even worse than in Black Panther. Really poor special effects. So much was made in the build up to the movie about how Brie Larson was getting ripped and how she was, you know, doing all this weightlifting and all this combat training and jiu-jitsu and martial arts and boxing and all these obstacle courses and all this strength conditioning to try and pull off these action scenes. And yet somehow every single action sequence in the movie turned out to be complete poop, man. Like, turned out complete crap. Like like really choppy. You know, from the fight scenes that I watched, it's just all CGI. Brie Larson does nothing. They even, it's funny how they're trying to use this to push feminism. You know, releasing it near International Women's Day, yet somehow they still needed a butt double for Brie Larson because she didn't have a nice enough figure. You know, she wasn't sexy enough, so. So they had to get her a butt double. Like, do you see what I mean, guys? This movie just fails, man. It's an epic failure. It is a failure of epic proportions. I mean, everything about this movie sucks. It sucks as a comedy. It sucks as an action movie. It sucks as a comic book movie. It sucks as a drama because Brie Larson's acting was terrible. Let's be real. Her acting was just so wooden and stiff. And even some of the big critics here on YouTube, some of the big you know, shill movie reviewers are even commenting on how Brie Larson was just so bland as Captain Marvel. I mean, you remember how when Wonder Woman came out, you had Gal Gadot and she was being praised for her performance. People loved it. I personally didn't know what the fuss was about. But she got really praised for her acting by all these big critics, and Brie Larson, even with all these shill critics, they can't even bring themselves to say that she can act because she can't. She's terrible. Really, no charisma whatsoever. Just bland, boring. She's just a run-of-the-mill actress that, you know, they could have picked anybody to play this character and they would have done a serviceable job, probably even better. I mean, I mentioned how I didn't see this in the theatre. Do you know what I did see in the theatre? Me and my missus, we actually went to see Alita Battle Angel, which was another, you know, movie with a female lead role. And that movie, you know, that movie wasn't perfect. It had its problems, but for the most part, I did enjoy it. You know, it had some nice special effects. I actually did have some really good CGI in that movie, and you know, the action sequences were okay. And what I liked about that movie too was in that movie I didn't really get this you know, radical feminist man bashing propaganda that I get from watching Captain Marvel. You know, Captain Marvel was very political to me, whereas Alita Battle Angel, whereas it had its issues, I didn't like all the melodramatic relationship stuff in the movie. I don't think it worked at all, but that movie at least I got the concept. I kind of understood it, and again it was very much a manga. It was very much an anime style movie, and they kind of captured the whole anime vibe and feel, whereas again, it wasn't perfect, but I did enjoy it. It was watchable. You know, me and my missus went to see it, and you know, we somewhat enjoyed it a lot more than we thought we would, or at least I did anyway. And yeah, it was okay. But this movie, Captain Marvel, I just can't even bring myself to sit through this shit, man. It's boring. Brie Larson, I mean, your movie sucks, man. Captain Marvel is a failure of epic proportions, and I know that I'm gonna get called a man baby and a white male and all that shit for not liking this movie. Sue me, take me to court. This movie sucks, man. Captain Marvel, epic failure. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching, and God bless.